Hey everybody, what's going on? And on today's vlog, we are going to be discussing My City by Kosmos. Let's get into it. Hey Sarah, how's it going? So what are we going to be discussing on our vlog today?
Today we are going to be discussing the My City Legacy campaign. This is not going to be a spoiler-free review, so if you have not finished your campaign, if you haven't even started it yet, but you're interested in doing that, or if for whatever reason you just don't want to hear about the spoilers for the My City campaign, you should go watch one of our other videos.
Indeed.
Alright, so we are going to go ahead and start talking about it. And this is not going to be a super in-depth discussion about it. We'll just tell you kind of the general gist of the game and then some of our thoughts on it. So My City is sort of a unique legacy game because it has a legacy side where you can play, and then it also has like an evergreen side. So if you want to play the Legacy campaign, you can play through 24 different episodes, which are divided into 8 different chapters with 3 episodes in each chapter. And you can play and you will make alterations to your board and your pieces and the cards in the deck and all kinds of stuff. However, when you are finished, or if you're not interested in that, you can play on this side of the board, and it's a static game. It does not change, like the Legacy version would. So there's sort of it's a kind of a hybrid version of like a Legacy game and a non-Legacy game. And we have not played the non-Legacy game yet. We have only just completed the 24 games in the Legacy sort of version of the game. And that's what we'll be talking about today. We are going to hang on to our copy and at least try this side. But after 24 games of My City, I think we're just about ready to say goodbye.
Indeed.
So would you like to hear a little bit about the campaign?
Yeah.
Okay, so like I said, if you are going to play the campaign, you start with a board that looks like this, and each player has a set of polynomino pieces, and we have a bunch of different types. Let me see if I can find some things. Okay, this is kind of what they're going to look like to start with. There's 3 different colors. Just ignore this gear symbol. That's a sticker that I added as we went through the campaign. But there's 3 different colors, and they're all different shapes. And in each, in each shape, there are one of each of the colors. So for the square, there's a blue one, a red one, and a yellow one that are all this square shape and size. So that's kind of what you start with, the pieces that you start with. Then you also start with this deck of cards, and these cards have matching pictures of the tiles that you have. So the way that it works generally is that it's simultaneous play. So what happens is players will reveal a card from the deck. Every player will find this piece in their own supply, and then they'll place it on the board. And the board placement has some different rules that govern how they can be placed and what's most optimal as far as points go, depending on sort of which episode you're in the campaign. So the game will change over time significantly. When we were finished with our campaign, this is what my board looked like. Okay, so here's what it started with, right? And then this is what mine looked like when our campaign was finished. So we added a lot of stickers. We changed the way the landscape looked quite a bit. And we added all different kinds of new sort of mechanics and end game conditions and scoring conditions and all kinds of stuff over the course of the campaign. And the way that we did that was, like I said, there are 24 episodes, and they're divided into these chapters. So there are 8 of these chapters, and each chapter has 3 episodes in it, and each of those episodes sort of corresponds to what that chapter is about. So for example, the first chapter was sort of like a discovery, right? We had sort of discovered this new land, and it was rich with like natural resources, and there wasn't a lot of industrialization or modernization going on the board. So this first one was sort of like a discovery. And then as we went through each chapter, we discovered and grew our city more and more. So that the very next thing that happened was we discovered churches, and churches became a thing that we had to sort of contend with as we placed pieces on our board. The churches became a new piece. There were actually new pieces, the new polynomino pieces in this envelope that represented these churches. And when churches came up in the deck of cards, because we also added cards for the churches, then you would have to build the churches. Previously, we had an option of whether or not we wanted to build something, but when churches came up, we'd have to build it. So after we dealt with the churches, a flood came and changed sort of the landscape and the way that the landscape looked. So we had some things that we had to deal with that. Then there was a gold rush, and we discovered gold that we first would mine out of mountains. There were these little tiny, they're covered up now, but there were these little tiny gold pockets, and you could mine gold from there and collect it in this sort of curio cabinet over here for various reasons. So after we had the gold rush, we discovered factories. And factories, I don't exactly remember what happened in this chapter, but factories
It was the gear symbol.
Is that what it was? Okay,
Yeah.
so factories allowed us to add this gear symbol to the game, which we'd previously not had in play. And we did that by actually adding some more new polynomino pieces and their respective cards, but also by adding some of these gear symbol stickers to some of our existing pieces. So that was the factories chapter. Then we had the mine, where this piece right here was added to our boards, and these 3 areas here corresponded to mines, which were here. They've since been covered up, but we discovered these mines, and then we could mine for additional benefits, essentially. So that was what this chapter covered. Then we had the railroad, so we added some stickers down here at the bottom to represent our railroads, and we started to try to transport goods with the railroad. And again, that provided some alternative ways for us to get some extra resources and that kind of thing. And then finally, the last chapter was prosperity. And in prosperity, we were really trying to build things that were going to like look nice. We added this house or mansion to our property, and we were trying to create parks by having spaces of greenery that were surrounded on all sides. And we were trying to add trees, and we were trying to sort of cover up all the rocks here. And so the prosperity chapter dealt with sort of beautifying our existing city. And then that was it. That was the last chapter. So we had those 8 chapters, and as we went through each of the chapters, we played 3 episodes per chapter. And the way that looked was that this is for the 8th chapter. So this, when you open an envelope, in addition to any other contents that the envelope would have, they would also have 2 pieces of paper always. Then usually there was some stickers, sometimes there were polynomino pieces or additional cards, but there were always these 2 pieces of paper. This one is an overview of everything that you're going to see in this chapter of the game. So it gives you a little bit of flavor text to kind of explain our new evolution of gameplay. And this is sort of a theme. This is sort of a theming thing, right? So they would give you this sort of background on why we were doing what we were doing as far as the theme was concerned. And then they would lay out each of the episodes that you would see in that chapter, and it would tell you what rules were going to change if you needed to do something with some of the other stuff that was in the envelope. So they might tell you, like, add this sticker to your board or add this piece to the game or that kind of thing. So this would lay out sort of all of the new rules that would govern the episodes that you're going to play in this chapter. And then, like I said, each envelope also came with one of these, which was sort of like just a quick reference reminder of anything pertinent to each particular episode. So if there was something we needed to do at the start of each episode, or if there was a scoring condition we needed to remember for that episode, or that kind of thing, then it would be all laid out in this piece of paper here. So like I said, we had the 8 chapters. And each of the chapters had all the contents needed for that chapter in an envelope with instructions on how to use everything that we would find in that envelope. What we did was we would play a chapter at a time. So that was 3 episodes or 3 games. And then we would be finished with that chapter. So we actually sat down 7 times, because the 7th time we played through 2 chapters back to back. We sat down 7 times, and each time we played 3 games. They're very quick games. The box time is 30 minutes. I'd say that's probably accurate. They're pretty quick games, so playing 3 back to back wasn't really that big of a deal. And it was nice because sort of each chapter is, they're divided into chapters based on the sort of mechanics and gameplay that each one changes or brings to the table something new. So if you play through the 3 episodes in a single chapter at once, you kind of get momentum going with the new mechanics, and it's easy to remember to incorporate the new things and stuff like that if you're playing those episodes back to back. So, like I said, we have completed the campaign. We went through all 24 episodes, all 8 chapters, and I had a good time doing it. I really, really enjoy Legacy style games. It's one of my favorite ways to play games. I really love Legacy as just sort of a way to discover a game. So I really enjoy Legacy games. I thought that this one was really interesting and highly, highly thematic. It's subtle, but this whole thing was all about sort of like this discovery of a new land, all the way from its birth to modern times, right? And through each step of its growth and evolution, you were there monitoring how things were changing and how the resources in the natural environment was changing, and how you could use it to your advantage, and how technology and industrialization sort of came to be a part of things. So it was highly, highly thematic. And it was quite an interesting exercise, let's say. So I think that it was neat, but I don't know that I had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, because like you said, the evolution of the game was there. You felt it thematic not only in its theme, but also in being a legacy game, because every time you went into a new chapter, you were getting new things to score, or things would act differently. And so it's like, okay. And it was also pretty, like, easy to understand. Take into account, we are both hobby gamists. We play a lot of games, so polynomial games it was pretty easy to pick up. And and
it walks you through very, very not slowly necessarily, but it doesn't ramp up too quickly. The first episode was like really, really easy.
Yeah, and it was over like right away, and we were kind of like,
yeah, and it was really easy to understand, and we we didn't have to really read the rule book more than the first time or anything like that. We didn't really have any questions or anything. And then from there, it sort of ramped up over time, but never too quickly. So they fed you the new things in very easy to digest bits.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But it, like you said, at a lot of times it wasn't really fun, and it was very dry. And it was just kind of like theme and then polyomino placement. So it felt like Tetris, but with more theme. And
and more specific rules.
Yeah.
One thing that I did like about it was that with the sort of addition of each episode, they would subtly change your understanding of the game, right? And not just the theme, but also the mechanics, right? Like initially, we could place these buildings and it didn't matter like which colors were touching each other. You just kind of wanted to get them on your board, right?
Yeah.
But then eventually it got to a point where if you could create color groupings of the same color, sorry about my screamy cat.
I need love.
He wants to be in the video, I guess. But if you could create large color groupings for each color, you could score more points. Then there were even future episodes past that where the color groupings were like almost essential, where if you didn't create a color grouping, then you were not going to be able to score, or things like that. So they really did a great job of sort of allowing the game to like blossom. They gave you these little bite-sized pieces, but as they built up, you created this sort of, very, very living sort of experience,
Yeah.
And while it was pretty dry a lot of times and sometimes kind of boring or even kind of frustrating at times just because you couldn't always get the game to do what you wanted it to.
Yeah, it's also, a polyomino game, so if you don't figure everything out and fit it in the way you want to, then you just get kind of frustrated. And to do that 3 times a chapter, and sometimes I think even our last 2 chapters we played back to back, so that was 6 chapters.
Now those were choices that we made,
yeah,
right? Like we could have
definitely
just played 1 episode at a time instead of doing the 3 episodes for each chapter at a time. But I really think that my understanding and enjoyment of the game, such as it was aided in that we did the 3 episodes of each chapter together in one sitting. So I think it was better to do that than not.
Yeah.
However, that, like Nick said, that may have caused a little bit of that sort of burnout that we started to feel with the game.
Maybe it was also just a little too long, because so some legacy games have a lot with going on within the game, and they add different rules, but not so much like for this polyomino game, like different placement rules and different interaction rules. But like other legacy games would interact like new bits, new pieces, so you had the kind of like a little more of a fresh perspective on the game. But this is kind of like, well, the blue ones need to be all together, or the blue, red, and yellow ones need to be,
Or
somehow.
there were even a few episodes where, like, if you could get your yellow buildings adjacent to trees, you'd score more points. And if you could get your red buildings where they were surrounding different things, you could, add stickers to your board or that kind of thing.
Yeah. And sometimes, in some episodes, or some even whole chapters, it was just very confusing, or there was a lot of rules in some of them, a lot of placement rules that
I don't think it was confusing, but I do think that because it was constantly evolving, you were never really allowed sort of a mastery of anything, right?
Yeah.
Because like every single game, something new was introduced or something was changed.
Yeah.
So it meant that you never really felt like you had quite a handle on the strategy behind exactly what you should be doing.
Yeah.
And I actually thought, while that was kind of frustrating overall, I liked the evolution of the game. I knew that I could always expect something fresh from each new episode.
I would say that's the top pro for this game. Because the game for my city would constantly be changing and evolving, and so there wasn't like, you could even say there wasn't ever a staleness. It was just we say dry because it's a polyomino game, and
yeah, I would say dry, not stale.
Yeah, and with the new rules, it freshened things up for maybe the first episode, but then when you get into episode 3, you're like, okay, I'm ready to move on to something else. And then once the next chapter, even some chapters, it was like, okay, that's not really different from the chapter previous, or sometimes it's like, whoa, that's a hard change from the last chapter.
I thought that the complexity ramped up in a nice sort of cadence, right?
I feel like it was like a climax, like it would go up, 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 and then climax, and then like towards the end, it started to kind of figure out, it started to get back under a handle of like simple play.
Yeah. I think, like I said, the very first episode was really, really simple. And I said, I'm okay with this being simple in the first episode because it's a legacy game and I expect a lot of things to change as we play, but I hope they do change because otherwise this is going to be really boring. Yeah. But they did. They changed and evolved over time and fairly quickly and quite a lot. And I think that for me, that was the highlight of this campaign, was to sort of see not just your city develop and change over time and stuff like that, but to see the game itself really develop and change. I feel like if there were going to be a model for a legacy game as far as the mechanics behind legacy, where it needs to be, like an ever evolving, ever changing sort of thing, I feel like this would be an excellent model for legacy games in general, right? Because legacy games are supposed to be changing. The
evolution was like one of the biggest things that we kept saying throughout our time with My City. But there were also some times where like I would be losing at a time and there'd be bonuses that would like benefit you more. But then when I went to winning, I would get less benefits. Like my benefits would almost be like I was getting like the short end of the stick when I lost, and then I got the short end of the stick when I won. And I was like, how is this? It just so felt like I fell into that a lot in this game.
So like I said, this is sort of a cheat sheet to help us remember what happens throughout the course of a chapter. And over here you can see what happens at the end of each episode, right? So they give you a little bit of like upkeep information and stuff like that, but then they say for the first player, whatever player came in first, you get 2 of these progress dots, and those are tracked on your board right up here. And then for the second player, you get just 1. Now this thing here changed every episode. So in episode 22, that's what the first and second player got. But maybe in episode 6, the player who came in first got 1 progress dot and a tree sticker, right? And then the player who came in second got a rock sticker.
Because it just seemed like that kind of changed throughout all the episodes, all 8 chapters, and like some were better than others. And for me, it seemed like earlier on I was receiving just the short end of the stick, like when I lost, and then when I won, I was like, cool. And then all of a sudden, like there would be a point where I think like in the first couple, you didn't even like the second player wouldn't even get a dot, and then later on, like when I started winning, you would also get a dot. So you had like multiple dots already, and then all of a sudden you were still continuously getting dots.
It didn't matter that I was ahead for about 80% of the campaign though, because Nick won.
I did pull out a win in the end.
I was seriously, I was ahead.
You were ahead a lot.
The game,
in the middle.
The way that the legacy game ends is at the end of episode 24. Whoever has the most of these progress dots right here wins the campaign. And for about 80% of the campaign, solid, like from the start through like the first 80% of it, I was definitely in the lead. But then in the last 20% of the campaign, my play just like absolutely went downhill. I started to like fumble so hard, and Nick started to get a lot more of the things that would get traction. He got some traction, and he was able to get more progress dots, and eventually that led to him winning the campaign.
Yeah.
So I think to Nick's point that he was at a disadvantage when he won and when he lost. I do agree with him. There were certain episodes where if he would win, he would get something that was okay, but I would also get something that was okay, even though I came in second place. But then there were other episodes where like I won and I got something really nice, and then he got something kind of crappy. So, and I think that just happened randomly.
Yeah.
That like
was
he
very
was
strange,
always on the short end of that. I think if this was not a legacy game, I think if you played these games repeatedly, there would be instances where you could say,
lose here,
yeah,
win
exactly.
here.
It's strategic for me to actually come in second here instead of first. But because it was a legacy game, those were not necessarily apparent right away, and we were juggling a lot of other new information. So it wasn't always like, oh, I should strategically lose this episode, right?
Yeah, or lose enough, because there were other things you could do in the game. Yeah, you didn't win this, but then because in some of the later chapters, I wouldn't win, but what I acquired throughout that episode was a lot more than what you would win.
Yeah, because initially it was just kind of about what happened at the end of each episode, but as we got further into the campaign, there were races for certain things. So if you would come in first in the race, you would get like additional benefits. And I did okay with that, but Nick did a lot better at it. You can see on his board, he completely, I can't remember what they called it. Do you remember what they called it when you dug out the mine?
I think that it was, I don't know if they were calling it anything. I just think it was
essentially when you completely finished your mine, you would get extra benefits. And I was really close, but I didn't quite pull it off.
So right there, that was 4 more, I guess, victory and end of the campaign victory points.
Because these little dots here, if you get to this part, you would get to fill in extra dots up here. And because he tapped out, maybe it's tap out. Because he tapped out both of his mines, he got, all 3 of his mines, he got 6 additional campaign victory points for that, whereas I only tapped out 1, so I only got 2. And then there were a couple other things, in the very last game, I was in a position where I could have possibly gotten the last piece of gold I needed in my gold cabinet, which would have gotten me the 4 progress dots here. But in order to do that, I would have had to get all the way over here with my train, and it's not super easy to build this train here.
And that's where it came in the deck, because the deck, it depended on who would get there first.
Right. So that race that we were talking about, this is one of those things. There was a race. There were 2 races in this last game, and if I could have come in first in both of the races, I could have built my train track over to here, picked up these 2 pieces of gold, put them in my cabinet, gotten those 4 progress symbols, and been maybe a little bit more likely to win. However, I did not manage to win one of the 2 races, and then I knew I was pretty much sunk. So I didn't prioritize winning the other race, because if I would have only won one of the 2 races, it wouldn't have been enough to give me the what I needed.
Yeah, and there was and about the rules and how sometimes I got confused. At the bottom of it, there was a bonus if you would able to complete everything on the bottom. But in one of our last games, if you had trees, you couldn't cover trees. So I kind of shot myself in the foot and was like, oh, well, I can't do that. So I can't even get the extra 2 gold nuggets for more progress points.
But he did keep me from doing it. So even though he wasn't able to do it the way that he wanted to by winning one of the 2 races, he kept me from winning both of them, which is what I really, really needed to have a chance at winning. So anyway, the campaign was really interesting. I like their execution of sort of the legacy format. They had the envelopes, right? For each chapter, there was a new envelope, and you would open the envelope, and it, like I said, it would have the rules sheet and the little aid, and then it would also have anything else you needed to complete that chapter, like the stickers or new pieces or cards or that kind of thing. And it was all contained in that one chapter. So you could, after you're familiar with the base game rules, you could open up each chapter, read the new rules for the episode you were about to play, get any components you needed from the envelope, and go ahead and start. It was a really, really quick, easy way to jump straight into every single game. And it felt like it was easy to keep track of all of the bookkeeping for this. Legacy games, just by their nature, have a lot of bookkeeping to them. So that means that you have to add stickers to something, or change the cards, or add new pieces, or take away pieces, or that kind of thing. And sometimes it can just kind of get to be a lot of bookkeeping, where you're kind of doing things that are outside of the game just to facilitate playing the game. But I really think that their system with sort of the self-contained chapters with each chapter having, 3 games in it. I think that was a really nice way to execute the sort of legacy style of the game. All the components were nice, especially for single-use items. Now, obviously, this one has the like sort of evergreen version that you can play as well. So all the components are nice enough to definitely do that with.
Even when we made like sticker mistakes, it wasn't like a whole. They stuck on well enough, but they didn't stick on too well to where like if you had to peel them off, it was like, oh well, I'm taking some board with me.
But even that, like, if we ever made any sticker mistakes, it was like solely on us because they have this grid system in the game where you can see up here they have these light colored letters A through K, and then these light colored numbers 1 through 11, and they would tell you, like if you ever had to put a sticker on a particular place on the board, like this one for example, or this one here, they would tell you, okay, you're gonna put that on E3, isn't that? Yeah, E3, right? So you knew exactly based on the grid system where to put things if they needed to be put in a specific place, right?
Yeah.
So I think that the facilitation of the legacy style gameplay was well thought out. And I think that they did a really excellent job of producing a legacy game. I always think when I at the end of a legacy campaign, when you see all of the stuff that had to go into the game and how every single thing had to come out at exactly the right time and with, the right instructions and, what had to have come out before then for that to make sense. And when you see all of that sort of culminated at the end of a legacy campaign, I'm always so proud of the creators of the game for sorting through all of those details to bring us that thing, right? Like it's quite a bit to produce a legacy style game just to make sure everything is packaged the right way, comes out in the right order, that kind of thing. And they did a really good job with that in this one.
If board games weren't already hard to, design and test, and then now you got a whole plethora of aspects with a legacy game.
For sure. Now, I think this is a 2 to 4 player game, and there are components that we absolutely did not even touch because we didn't have another 2 players, right? It was just the 2 of us. So even though this game could have supported up to 4 players, we only used sort of the components for 2 players. Because of that, I think you could probably hand this off to 2 other players and they could play through the campaign fairly easily as well, as long as, they were not upset by like the envelopes being open, right? And then like if there are sticker sheets, there were always plenty of stickers, but like maybe there would be some missing from a sheet, right? So I think you could probably pass this off to another couple if you wanted to, or another play group of 2 if you wanted to. And another set of people could play through the legacy game. Now I say I think you could because we did sticker some stuff, right? So I think that as long as they were okay with just being like, hey, you haven't seen this icon yet, just ignore the fact that it's on this piece for now. If they're okay with that kind of stuff, and there wouldn't even be a lot of that kind of stuff, but if they would be okay with that kind of stuff, then they could probably play through the campaign as well. And even that, I went back through, we did not, when we opened a new envelope, we would like take these out and put them in the rule book, and then we would just kind of toss all of the stickers and things like in a pile. And I thought it was going to be really problematic to try to figure out which stickers came from like which episodes and stuff like that, but they're actually labeled. So even at the end of the campaign, when I was going back through and trying to sort of sort everything back out, even that was not very difficult. So I think you could probably pass this on to 2 other players and they could probably play through the campaign without very much of anything being spoiled for them at all if you wanted to use your copy that way. Now, because it has an evergreen side, you may not want to do that. If you like the game well enough to keep the evergreen side in your collection, you may not want to do that. Or you might be playing with more than 2 players for your first time through the campaign. But if you're only playing with 2 players your first time through the campaign and you don't want to keep the game in your collection, or you're willing to sort of loan it out to people while they play through the campaign, I think you could get multiple sort of legacy campaigns out of this if you are only playing each one with 2 players, which I think is a nice sort of
use of the game.
A nice sort of use of the game. So I think that we've said everything that needs to be said.
Yeah. So we all hope you enjoyed this discussion of My City. If you have played My City and there's something we didn't mention or something you want to talk about, please put them in the comments. And until next time, toodles!